This is Hassan Sarwar. I am a professor of computer science and engineering from United International University of Bangladesh, and I am also director of a company of Edusoft Consultants Limited. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from all the audiences around the world. I believe this is the first session of Global Virtual Summit going on, and it is 9 a.m. in the morning as per Eastern Standard Time. Here in Bangladesh, it is 5 p.m. Afternoon. I think it is a pretty good time for all of us to meet together. And here, my session, what I have to say about is management and assessment of capstone projects. So, as I'm a computer science background teacher, and I'm teaching in the computer science and engineering department for quite a long time. And recently, we almost for 3 years back, we have started practicing the outcome-based education in our program, and we believe that and also in our country, like in Bangladesh, all the engineering programs are trying to adopt the outcome-based education approach. And these capstone projects, or it named as in other ways like final year project, final year design project. So final year design project or final year project, it has got various names, and but all the same, all the cases, it is actually denoting the almost the similar practices. So this final year project, which the name itself implies that this project is given at the final year of graduation, meaning that we know that a bachelor is 4-year course usually, and after finishing the first 3 years, a student is given a project, usually in a team, and that is called final year project. Someone calls it final year design project. Some research says it is a capstone project. Here I have collected two definitions from two different authors, from Kalamia and Farmin. So they are saying is that the main objective of capstone project is to prepare students for the real world engineer practices. By the way, I must mention that whatever here I'm showing in these slides are taken from different literature, different published journals, and you will see the references I have mentioned after the title of that slide. So, as Kalamia suggests, that the main objective of capstone project is to prepare students for the real world engineering practices. And to achieve this objective, the course is designed to bridge the gap between academic knowledge that students acquire through various courses and industry applications. So basically, the background says a student is made prepared to join the industry in a suitable format. And the whole learning, all the learning he or she has made in the past 3 years, all the knowledges he or she has gathered in the past 3 years, applying those learnings in the real world environment is a big challenge. And the final year project actually creates that environment in which students learns how their accumulated knowledge can be applied in the industry. And there is another definition by Farmin. It is FYP, means final year project, is the culminating learning experience of engineering programs. So culminating means all the knowledges they have gathered, and it requires students to demonstrate that they can integrate knowledge, skills, and professional graduate attributes developed during the program and perform at a standard expectation of graduates. So, so as we go on to the practices of capstone projects or final year projects, I would like to say a few words about traditional project practices that were used to be followed in different parts of the world in almost all universities. Yes, there was a project in the final year before it was named like capstone project or final year design project in many universities. But this project was almost common in all undergraduate programs, in special engineering programs. And there were projects included both project and thesis type of work, or sometimes it's a pseudo thesis type of work. And there is supervisor used to be assigned to the project team of 3 or more students. And the duration was not fixed. That means the completion time of that project is not necessarily be 1 year. Yes, it is expected that the student will be finishing it 1 year or 1 semester or 2 semesters, but usually it was seen that the project may continue even for many years. And for that, only for that project, sometimes the students' final graduation remains suspended. So, and this completion many of the times depend on the project supervisor, because the supervisor waits for the ultimate quality to be produced by the students, or sometimes it depends on the students. Sometimes he or she gets a job and got too much busy with his or her job and cannot find enough time to give time to complete the project work. And the involvement of the students, like in meeting with the supervisors, it is all fully at the discretion of the supervisor, and the students, whenever and wherever they want to talk and discuss, they can do it. And at the final defense, usually an external is appointed and for evaluation of the project, though the main grade is determined or suggested by the project supervisor. So there is an external, of course, at the final defense, but it is understood that since the supervisor was quite a long time with the students, so it was expected that the main grade will be almost similar like the something the supervisor will be suggesting. And in the there a student has to produce a final report, of course, but that final report that did not have any particular rule, or there was no rubric to assess that final report. And there were less or no control on maintaining the quality of the problem used in the project. So, the students or the supervisor, whoever is selecting a project or a problem for this project, that problem should qualify to fulfill certain criteria. That was not a mandatory requirement. So, the difficulties or complexities of those problems varied a lot among the different project groups even in a single program. And all the communications were done by the supervisor alone, and there was no specific concern on developing different skills among the students except the communication and technical skill. Most of the times we can see that in those projects, actually the supervisor focused on the technical skills, a little bit of communication skills, and this communication skill mainly focused on presentations and of course it happens at the end of the project when the presentation was given in front of the externals and at the presence of the supervisor. This was a traditional project practice. But when we are talking about capstone project or final year project or final year design project, whatever the name is, we um, have certain concern or certain ideas that come into our mind, because these projects, these specific expectation are that certain outcomes has to be earned by the students. So basically these projects expects that students will earn or achieve some learning outcomes, as well as the program and the supervisors are also we achieve such a learning outcome. So, so in the current practice, what are the things or concept that are new and that are I should not say it's new because this is being practiced. I should say what is different from the traditional practices. So I have mentioned some of the practices that are different from the traditional practices. For example, here in the Capstone project or final year design project, specific learning outcomes design is mandatory and to be mapped to student outcome. We'll come to these things later on in details, but we have to somehow the learning outcomes of the final year project should be defined and it should be mapped to the student outcome or graduate output. And measurement of each outcome should be made obvious and transparent. That means we just cannot sit tight by only designing the outcome. We'll have to say that how we can measure those outcomes, and the process should be transparent. Now, third point is the choice of the problem. The problem we choose should follow a certain guidelines so that it is a complex engineering problem. It means it is not like that we have like this problem and we want to solve it. My friends or my colleagues or someone or my ideas have generated this problem, so I'm happy to solve this problem, is not sufficient until and unless we prove that the problem is a complex engineering problem. So this is a mandatory requirement. And the duration of the project is fixed for all groups. So at one time, the project, as I said, in traditional cases, the project was lengthy and sometimes it spent years. This does not happen in these cases. It is duration is fixed, and specific set of practices for assessment and evaluation has to be framed to judge the efforts and skills that has been learned by the students. And the publication of the report, that is the final report, as we said earlier in the traditional practices, here the final report is a output that is created in a systematic development of processes in various stages of the project life cycles. So these current concerns were not present in the previous practices of project management. Usually, full project is divided into 1 year. So somewhere it is carried through 3 semesters, sometimes it is carried through 2 semesters. But usually, if we want to mention the duration, we should say it is 1 year usually. So that is why we call it. You have to finish it in fixed time. And if no matter if it is 3 semesters or 2 semesters, usually an assessment is developed at the end of each semester. And the final grade is given in different ways. In some universities, the practice is to assign the grade at the final evaluation of 2 or 3 semesters. And other universities, they assign the grades at the end or evaluation at the end of each semester. So basically, if there are 2 semesters, students receive 2 grades at the end of the first semester, and then at the end of the second semester. But in other universities, it happens that the first semester is concluded, but student does not receive any grade. And after the end of the second semester or the third semester, wherever it applies, so he or she gets a grade, and that grade is distributed among all the previous 2 or 3 semesters. So here, this is the difference. And now the point is why Capstone project is so important, and or why we are talking to introduce this Capstone project. As we know, there are some accreditation bodies like Washington Accord, so or like European Higher Education Area, or like ABET. So what is an accreditation body? An accreditation body ensures that a program is producing qualified and capable graduates conforming to a certain standard, especially in case of engineering students, on which I am focusing today. They have certain attributes, they have certain like knowledge, they have certain attitude, they have certain skill that is ensured by a program. And accreditation bodies make this happen. So, like Washington Accord, which is originally signed in 1989, which is a multilateral agreement between bodies responsible for accreditation or recognition of tertiary level engineering qualifications within their jurisdictions, who have chosen to work collectively to assist the mobility of professional engineers. We know that now many of the countries has become a signatory member of Washington Accord. That means all those countries are ensuring that the engineering programs who are receiving accreditation from those bodies are following the guidelines of Washington Accord. Similarly, in Europe, European Higher Education Area in 1999 was meant to ensure more comparable, compatible, and coherent higher education systems in Europe. And it is worthy mentioning that ABET, a non-profit ISO certified organization in USA that also accredits college and university programs only in USA, but they are also, ABET is very popular, that is why, and that is it has is mentioned. But like ABET, in every country there are accreditation bodies. So these accreditation bodies ensure that proper mobility or compatible mobility of engineers or professional engineers is possible if a country or a university conforms to the guidelines of these accreditation agencies. Now, if we go deeper down, we will find that what does the accreditation agencies say? Let us come to this BAET, BAETE. Since I am from Bangladesh, so I am taking examples from Bangladeshi scenario. I must say that Bangladesh is now a provisional member of Washington Accord, and Bangladesh is trying to be a full signatory member, and we hope we are getting very soon. So here we have a manual, and this manual has something mentioned regarding the final year design project or Capstone project. And what is it? You can see that in section 4.6, they are saying a year-long final year design project or capstone project is no longer obligatory in the curriculum, but demonstration of culminated POs in solving complex engineering problems remains required, and the year-long final year design project or capstone project is the preferred method. So the manual somehow signifies the importance, the culmination of all the POs. We'll talk about these POs and where we'll be where we'll be demonstrating those POs in solving complex engineering problems. And this is understood that when we are talking about too many POs, then final year design project or capstone project is the preferred method. And from the manual of BIET, I have mentioned the criteria 6 here. The criteria 6 is about curriculum and teaching learning processes. As I said, BIET is a local accreditation agency of Bangladesh. And I am showing you the contents of this accreditation body's requirement that must be fulfilled by an engineering program. So in the criteria 6, there are many criteria that a program must follow. So in criteria 6, named as curriculum and teaching learning processes, the final year design project has been mentioned. Here they are asking for describe the process followed in conducting the final year design projects. Describe how the experience in the final year design project is based on the knowledge and skills acquired in earlier coursework and incorporates appropriate engineering standards and multiple design constraints. And they are also asking for a list of titles of final year design projects completed in each semester of the last 3 academic years. And the accreditation body like BIET is also asking to see the final year design project reports during on-site visit. And also they are interested to see that how the program demonstrated the culmination of POs, in which method they want to see that. And they want to also know that how the method used is based on the knowledge and skills acquired in earlier coursework and how it incorporates appropriate engineering standards and multiple design constraints. There is another criteria 10 in that manual, which is called interactions with the industry. And here also we can see that under the sub-article like students' opportunities to gain industrial experience, here also final year design project is being mentioned. And here they are asking for evidences if the final year design projects are conducted with industry collaboration. And if yes, the details are being requested to be presented before the visiting team. However, if there are other methods the program is following to demonstrate the culmination of POs, that also can be done. But as I said, they also say that the preferred method is a capstone project or a final year design project. Now, so there are some important terminologies that we should consider, like student outcomes or graduate outcomes or program outcomes, course outcomes, complex engineering problem, selection of indicators for each type of outcome, selection of indicators for identifying the level of each type of outcome, assessment of activities performed in doing a project, mapping the activities with the specific indicators and outcomes, criteria to assign the final grade of each team member of a project team. So these are some terminologies or some, I should say, rather some concepts that we need to know if we want to integrate the whole bits and pieces of information and trying to integrate it a full framework. Before going into details, we just have a little bit of glimpse on what is the program outcome of Washington Accord. And as I said, that as a local agency in Bangladesh, BAETE, they are also following the guideline of Washington Accord. So this Washington Accord suggests this 12 program outcome that should be complied by a graduate during the time of graduation. So the program outcomes, the title of these requirements are engineering knowledge, problem analysis, design and development of solutions, investigation, modern tool usage, engineer and society, environment and sustainability, ethics, individual and teamwork, communication, project management and finance, and lifelong learning. So when we want to demonstrate that the culmination of POs have taken place here, meaning that we have to show that all these 12 program outcomes have been achieved. If we look at Abbott, there are also 7 outcomes they have mentioned. The concept is pretty similar. These 7 outcomes are like an ability to identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problems, an ability to apply engineering design to produce solutions, an ability to communicate effectively, an ability to recognize ethical and professional responsibilities, an ability to function effectively on a team, an ability to develop and conduct appropriate experimentation, an ability to acquire and apply new knowledge. So you can see, or we can see, that in both the cases, the focus is on developing the ability of a student. And as I said, that the requirement of Washington Accords and also in the Abbott, we have seen that complex engineering problem is a major requirement, that the problem we are trying to solve by the student team should be a complex engineering problem. Now, how we can make sure that the problem is a complex engineering problem? Yes, there are some characteristics are mentioned by Washington Accord, like depth of knowledge required. So the problem cannot be resolved without in-depth engineering knowledge at the level of some knowledge profile that has also been mentioned in Washington Accord. And there are some more characteristics, but usually it is been said that at least a problem should follow or should satisfy some of these attributes, but keeping number 1 is common. So it should follow the number 1 requirement, and it will fulfill some of the requirement from the other characteristics. So here, one requirement like depth of analysis required is very important. I believe that the problems that the students are targeting to solve should have no obvious solution and require abstract thinking and originality in analysis to formulate suitable models. So this is important that there will this is a unique problem. There should have some uniqueness, and for which a student has to explore, has to investigate. And when there is no obvious solution, that means he or she has to do some thinking process to develop, to imagine, and to find out a solution uh, through abstract thinking. And after that thoughts, when he has to come up with a solution, he or she has to go into the depth of the core knowledge that they have learned to the semester in the last 3 years. Actually, in the last 3 years, the courses they have gone through, from those knowledge, and using those knowledge their abstract thinking, they will be able to design the new system. So depth of analysis required, this item is pretty important, I believe. And there are some other requirements also, which some of you definitely know very well, and some of you may be still learning. And there are some of uh, the characteristics difficult to identify on a particular problem. And Washington Acad also mentions that complex engineering activities should be um, incorporated in the Capstone project. You can already see it here, that attributes of complex engineering activities, some of which might reasonably be encountered by a professional engineering undergraduate during capstone design or period of industry experience. So here you can see that they have to ensure that their range of resources are being used. That means they are involving the use of diverse resources, and resources like include people, money, equipment, materials, information, and technologies. And the level of interactions require resolution of significant problems arising from interactions between wide-ranging or conflicting technical, engineering, and other issues. Innovation involve creative use of engineering principles and research-based knowledge in novel ways. And the consequences to society and the environment is also important. So these are the some characteristics, some complex engineering activities, they have to conform or to be aligned with this when they are selecting their project. Uh, uh, Professor Altaf, are you there?
Yes, sir.
So should I continue?
Yes, sir. Haven't received any queries yet.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
If somebody is willing to ask any question, they can post the questions here.
In the chat, I think there is
Chat
a
box.
you can join the chat.
Yeah,
You
of
can
course.
join the chat, and also there is a discussion session also, and it's a questions tab, right? There
Right,
is a
sir. Exactly.
question tab and there's a discussion tab. So in the question tab, the someone can put their questions.
Yeah, we can have a break of 5 minutes, sir, if possible.
Yes,
Uh,
I think we should have a break
yeah,
of 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you.
right, sir. Let them ask if they have any queries. Then I'll post it to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, any queries, please?
Professor Altaf, I think there are no more questions in the chat, so I can continue. Professor Altaf, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. You can continue, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, in ABET, they have mentioned about a final year project, like the assessment of FYs are constrained in many institutions by accreditation regulations, we know. And capstone design courses typically include a wide variety of topics and provide students with many opportunities to develop design, communication, and interpersonal skills. This learning is aligned to produce the desired ABET learning outcomes. So, we see that to comply with ABET outcomes, Capstone project is a good way to achieve those outcomes. So, what are the challenges in managing a project or in the assessment? The challenging is the designing the learning outcome of final year project, because we understood that the graduate attributes, the program outcome or the student outcome is already outlined by Washington Accord or ABET or European higher education area. But individual programs of different universities have to design their own learning outcomes. It's because different disciplines requires a different type of capabilities to be grown within the students, within the graduates. So this is a challenge to design the learning outcome. Then design of rubric is the second challenge. Then development of clear criteria for evaluation of different outcomes. This has to be done. And the formulation of the problem. As I said, that a problem should be part of complex engineering problem. So formulation of such a problem is very important. and then design a plan specific to a particular project, how a project is conducted. That specific plan has to be designed. Then work breakdown structure has to be designed, that how the project will be completed, and the requirement collection and literature review that has to be done. And of course, it will be different in different types of project. And this is a challenge, that how um, a project supervisor will uh, will direct or guide the students based on the merit of that particular project. Project specific mapping of problems to the characteristics of complex engineering problem, I already mentioned, that comes with the formulation of the problem. So we have to confirm that the problem is oriented to solve some uh, solution which does not have any obvious solution so far. And project specific mapping to the course outcome and the program outcome is also a requirement. So these are the challenges now we have to face, especially by the supervisor and the program itself, to maintain a certain level of standard in all the capstone projects being carried out by different teams under the supervision of different faculty members. What I have done here is that I have uh, done some literature review, and I have tried to extract some examples being uh, practiced in different universities and colleges, and especially in different type of programs, engineering programs. So here I have come up with example from Goldberg. His publication is in IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology magazine in 2006. So how he and his team has demonstrated the Capstone project in terms of achieving student outcome has been shown. So they have the major three parts they have done is that they may have mapped to an outcome, and they have found the performance indicators, and they have designed or defined the assessment tools. For example, they are saying that there is an outcome C. This outcome is an ABET outcome. So this outcome shows that the student has to demonstrate the ability to design a system, a component or process to meet desired needs within realistic constraints such as economic, environmental, social, political, ethical, health and safety, manufacturability, and sustainability. So student has to achieve this outcome, which is known as outcome C, as per ABET's prescription. Now, this outcome has been broken down into some performance indicators, like here they're saying ability to design a system, component, process to meet design needs. Needs of whom? Needs of the customer, right? So here you can see the performance indicators are defines customer needs, defines design constraints, offers alternative solution, defines problems to be solved, defines project scope, compares alternative solutions, defines selection of final design, build prototype to meet needs, and validates performance of prototype. So these are the breakdown of all these outcomes. And this breakdown is known as performance indicators. Now, they have to define what are the assessment tools that a student has performed all these necessary requirements. So some assessment tools have been mentioned in this document, like project definition document, which will contain project objective statement, which defines problem and project scope, existing solutions, and design constraints. Then customer needs document contains the list of customer needs along with design constraints. Generated concepts document contains potential solutions generated by project team. There might be offering of multiple solutions. And the final concept document, which will be different selection of the proposed final design and the reason why the final design has been chosen. And then experimental verification document, which will contains test protocol, test results, data analysis, and conclusions regarding how well prototype meets performance requirements. And then they're going toward the final report, which will contain the final design, test results, information regarding how well customer needs were met with the prototype. So you can see that Goldberg has mentioned about different assessment tools for each of these performance indicators. And if a student fulfills all these performance indicators through these assessment tools, then we'll be able to say that the student has achieved outcome C. Now we go to another demonstration. Here, this is done by Ashwin, and it's been published in European Journal of Education in 2011. So the background philosophy for them is, if I'm not wrong, this is, well, let us go through. This final year project is supposed to be an open-ended problem-solving approach. And it definitely differs among different departments. And in their practices, some problems are research-based and some problems are design-based. And the need for the engineers is that they should be fluid in their approach to problem-solving, spontaneous, and being able to think on their feet makes the idea of structured learning outcomes for the FYP a seemingly counterproductive endeavor. So the thing they are saying is that since it is an open-ended problem, and since this is like it differs, the solution differs from project to project, so it is really a conflict to say that a structured learning outcome can be defined for all these different types of projects and all these different type of departments. So that is the fundamental findings. But there are common strategies by which these learning outcomes are aligned for different departments. And the strategy is the prescribed graduate attributes as determined by accreditation bodies and the expectations of graduate engineers in the workplace. So by these two common philosophy, like the requirement of accreditation bodies and the expectation from graduate engineers, some generic outcomes can be designed. So Ashwin has shown the use of revised Bloom's taxonomy to form the learning outcome. And Ashwin has outlined it as below, that Bloom's taxonomy is well known, we know that, and it is widely used learning theory. And in Anderson and Crotwell's revision, 4 main differences are observed as follows. The knowledge dimension is expanded, and the categories in the original Bloom's taxonomy are modified into verbs. Like original term was synthesis and evaluation, but they have been switched and they have been renamed as create and evaluate. So all verbs have been used in the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And the Bloom taxonomy is defined as the cognitive domain as well. So let us first know a little bit of knowledge dimension. What are the dimensions of knowledge? So Knowledge dimension means that knowing what. It has four categories: factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. So, factual knowledge includes isolated bits of information. Isolated bits of information, such as vocabulary definitions and knowledge about specific details. And conceptual knowledge consists of systems of information, such as classification and categories. Procedural knowledge includes algorithms, heuristics or rule of thumb, techniques and methods, as well as knowledge about when to use these procedures. So it's about process and when to apply this process. So this is also something someone has to know. And metacognitive knowledge refers to knowledge of thinking processes and information about how to manipulate these processes effectively. This is metacognitive. So we can see that knowledge has four dimensions, but all of these are knowledge. And knowledge means knowing something. So knowing something at the metacognitive dimension means that someone knows how to think, how to move forward his thinking process and information, and how to manipulate these processes. So that is metacognitive knowledge. And then comes the cognitive dimension. This cognitive dimension of revised Bloom taxonomy, as we said, that revised taxonomy has replaced all the nouns with verbs, and there are 6 skills from simplest to most complex skills. The simplest skill is known as remember. That means just recognizing and recalling relevant information from long-term memory. Understanding is the ability to make one's own meaning from educational material such as reading and teacher explanations. So they can form their own meaning from the information gathered from somewhere else, from many different methods. And applying is the third process, where it refers to using a learned procedure either in a familiar or new situation. So in a familiar situation or in a new situation, in any situation they can apply. And analyze is the next process, where it consists of breaking knowledge down into parts and thinking about how the parts relate to its overall structure. Students analyze by differentiating, organizing, and attributing. There are many explanations and explorations of these words in different literatures and websites as well. Then comes the evaluation, which was at the top of the original taxonomy, but it is now the 5th of the 6 processes in the revised version. It includes checking and critiquing. So after the evaluation, then the highest skill is creating. A process not included in the earlier taxonomy is the highest component of the new version. This skill involves putting things together to make something new. To accomplish creating tasks, learners generate plan and produce. So this is the creating something new is considered here. So we found cognitive dimension and we found knowledge dimension. Here, Ashvin has created a taxonomy where these two dimensions have been merged into a table. So you can see here that this is the earlier Bloom's taxonomy and this is the changed version. So knowledge has been replaced with remember, comprehension has been replaced with understand, application with apply, analysis with analyze, synthesis by create, and evaluation with evaluate. So these 6 dimensions are put here, and this knowledge has been separated. One is the verb aspect and one is the noun aspect. The noun aspect is not the knowledge dimension. It has been put in the horizontal axis. I mean the vertical axis. So you can see from here that the factual knowledge can be at the remember level, it can be in the understand level, it can be in the apply level, it can be on the analyze level, it can be on the evaluate level, and it can be on the create level as well. Similarly, the conceptual knowledge, the procedural knowledge, the metacognitive knowledge, all these knowledges can fall into any of the categories of these 7 dimensions of cognitive domain. And here Ashvin has mentioned a taxonomy table, a real one that has been used in certain projects of their department. So here they are showing that the factual knowledge, this factual knowledge in the remember column, they are showing that able to show knowledge of the literature, the important authors, related terminology, and key findings. So if a student is able to do this, meaning he or she has achieved this outcome. Now, if we want to go forward and we go to the create dimension of cognitive domain and stay within this factual knowledge, then we see if the student can give evidence that new knowledge is obtained from the findings using established methods and of interpretation. So if a new knowledge is obtained here, that means he has achieved the highest outcome on these knowledge dimension. So if, as per Ashvin, if we say we scale marks, if we give marks to students based on outcomes, so there are 26 variations. There's a 4 rows and 6 columns, 26 variations. And you can see if a student achieved all the highest cognitive dimension in each of the knowledge dimension, then the highest score will be 24. And this is the rubric Ashvin has proposed. Here you can see that this is a marking rubric. The total score is 24 from knowledge aspect, from factual. Anyone can get from 0 to 6. From conceptual, anyone can get from 0 to 6. Procedural can get 0 to 6. Metacognitive can get 0 to 6. And there is a remarks section where the assessor can write down the purpose of scoring and if there are any comments one has to make here. So this is Ashwin's proposal, and to design the rubrics based on Bloom's taxonomy, and it is a very generalized version. And you can see that these rubric is different from what we saw in our previous example of Calamia. And we are going to see some more uh, practices going around in different universities with IT or engineering projects. Professor Altaf, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay. So we take a short 2 minutes break.
Sure. Sure, sir. Why not? Sure. Hello, everyone. Our attendees, if you have any queries or any questions regarding this session on the topics which has been covered yet, please you can give the comments. In the chat box, you can ask the questions.
So, Professor Altaf, we move forward.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. So now we see another example of Calamia. It has been published in Education Research International volume in 2020. So he has mentioned something else here, like role of faculty advisor. So he said that in their practice, they have what they have done actually. The role of the faculty advisor is not getting themselves involved in solving problems. Rather, they help steer the student to achieve the solution through creative questions. And they arrange regular or frequent meetup with the students and review their progress by observing documentations. And the advisor set the milestones, that means targeted dates, and for the team to achieve the goals. So here, what the students do. Students actually, they maintain daily journals, weekly summaries, and the daily journals keep track of students' activities such as any progress, drawings, discussions, and plan. And they also give weekly stand-up presentations, milestones, and poster presentations. They write technical reports and make these documents available to all team members. But it is mentioned that daily journal is not a formal report. It is a reference place where students can find their thoughts and work in progress. That is what I told earlier, that the final report is not produced at the final stage. It is actually the production of systematic set of reports or developments happening throughout the year after the completion of different milestones. And weekly journals summarize the work and the work on the following questions, like what did your team accomplish during the specified time frame? What was your contribution to your team's progress during this time? What problems or challenges did you encounter during this time, and how did you address them? And what is your plan for the next specified time frame? And every week the team meets to provide their progress report as well as the plan for the next week. Each team delivers an update on their accomplishments, challenges, and plans. So this is what the students are doing every week. And how the measurements of student outcome is happening here? The student outcomes, this is also ABET, they are following the ABET guidelines. So student outcomes are broken into 3 to 4 performance indicators. It is almost like before what Goldberg has suggested. And these performance indicators are measurable. And each performance indicator addresses a portion of a student outcome. And a rubric is developed for each performance indicator with 3 levels of expectations: exceed expectation, meet expectation, and below expectation. So there are 3 levels, and for the outcomes, and the performance indicators are developed from student outcome that has been mentioned in ABET. So you can see that an example, they have shown that student outcome 6, that an ability to develop and conduct appropriate experimentation, analyze and interpret data, and use engineering judgment to draw conclusions. So here the performance indicators are: designs an experiment, conducts an experiment, analyzes and interprets data from an experiment, uses engineering judgment to draw conclusions from experimental data. So they have broken down the full student outcome into 4 performance indicators. So we can see from here that the breaking down of the an outcome into performance indicators, it is also the choice of the supervisor of the program. So here are 4 performance indicators, and you can see that how the rubric has been set up. As you say that the rubric is mentioning the 3 levels of outcome, like exceeds expectations, meets expectations, and below expectations. So the performance indicators here, you can see the design and experiment. It has this is a single performance experiment, performance indicator like designs and experiment. So this performance indicator can be at this level exceeds expectation if the experiment design, when correctly conducted, results in achieving the overarching goals of the experiment, and experiment procedure is clear and concise, can be performed by a knowledgeable technician, and specifies an appropriate amount of data to be gathered to reach supportable conclusions. But this performance indicator can become below expectation if the experiment design, when correctly conducted, did not achieve the overarching goals of the experiment. An experimental procedure lacks clarity and conciseness to an extent that a technician is unable to perform the procedure without extensive help, and does not specify sufficient data to be gathered to reach supportable conclusions. So, when the students are advised to produce a final report, then each student is asked to address the following in their technical report, like provide detailed description of the standards used in the design and implementation of the project, then describe how the system, component, or process meets desired needs within quantitative constraints, then describe how the system, component, or process meets desired needs within qualitative constraints, and the same thing needs to be mentioned within economic constraints. Then demonstrate an understanding of the impact of the engineering solutions in a global context. Demonstrate understanding of the impact of engineering solutions in an economic context, and demonstrate an understanding of the impact of the engineering solutions in an environmental context, and demonstrate the understanding of the impact of engineering solutions in a societal context. So they have to demonstrate their understanding in the final technical report as well as in their final presentations as well. And from so we can see that these outcomes can be measured only through the final report or presentations. So this is another approach that has been mentioned by Kalamia, and it has been published in Education Research International Volume 2020. Now we go another we go to another model proposal by Farmin, and his proposed model, the team and their proposed model has been published in International Journal of Engineering Education in 2018. And they have put their proposal for a school, Barcelona School of Informatics, and they have in that school they have 18 credits in final year project, and they have differentiated into two blocks, one of 3 credits, and they are calling it for project management, and another 15 credits for the project development. So the project management objectives are arranged in 4 modules. So 3 are common to all students, and 4th specific to the specialty in which the student is enrolled. So what does module 1 speaks about? The module 1 says information technology tools to support the management of projects and teams, covering specific applications of project management, internet resources for management, and management of the FYP through the network. So basically, they are focusing on the tools, tools and information. Module 2 is the requirement that the basics of project management, like covering integral project management, scope management, time management, economic management, and project sustainability. There are some basic concepts of project management. Then in module 3, project personal and professional skills for the management of projects and teams, covering management of people and equipment, information skills, sustainability, and efficient communication techniques are considered into here. In module 4, project management for the field of specialty is considered. It is very much specific to the particular project, like in the different department or in a same department, different type of projects. Someone may be working with the software development, someone may be working with robotics, someone may be working with a complex, developing complex algorithm. So depending on the type of the project, or someone, it is being done in biomedical engineering, or it is being done in software engineering or electrical engineering, based on the department and based on the type of the project, this module 4 is delivered. So 1 week after the completion of the 4 modules, students must submit a document summarizing all deliverables achieved so far, like introduction and the state of the art, scope of the project, temporary planning, budget, preliminary sustainability analysis, and bibliographical references consulted, and give a public presentation of the work. The project management professor then evaluates this presentation, and both the PM professor and the project supervisor evaluate the deliverables. So this is happened to the first 3 credit of the FYP. And the skills that are evaluated are the technical and professional skills. These 7 professional skills are like entrepreneurial attitude and innovation, sustainability and social commitment, effective oral and written communication, information literacy, autonomous learning, appropriate attitude towards work, and reasoning. So these skills are evaluated, but how? So these are the milestones that has been proposed by Farmin. That is the first initial. They are calling it initial milestone. They are calling it follow-up milestone and final milestone. So the initial milestone, at the initial milestone rubric, they have decided on 8 indicators. So the indicators are like problem formulation, work planning, methodology, then initial sustainability analysis, clear and correct written expression, oral communication by verbal language, oral communication body language, oral communication, adequate use of support elements. And on completion of the initial milestone, the project management teacher may ask for any corrections to be made, and students propose and schedule the follow-up milestone assessment around halfway stage of the FYP, approximately 2-3 months later. So this initial milestone has got 8 indicators, and it is understood that the project management teacher actually has got some contributions in directing the students to go toward the right track. Then the follow-up milestone. Here, the supervisor takes the lead and he evaluates the student progress, and the milestone rubric evaluates 8 indicators to identify deviations from the initial planning done in the initial milestone and assesses student attitude. If needed, repeat and re-evaluation is conducted. The evaluated indicators are like project contextualization, background and analysis of candidate solutions and technologies, planning, monitoring, justifying any deviation. If any changes have been made to the methodology, justification and description of new methodology, justification of the option selected to solve the problem presented by the project, and students' ability to take initiatives and decisions, weighting risks and opportunities, student ability to engage in work, showing a professional attitude and behavior, integration of knowledge and generation of creative solutions, identification of regulations, laws, rules, etc. that may potentially affect the project. And the final milestone is the must be completed no later than 1 year after student enrollment in the project. The final report and the public there is a public presentation, and there are 10. It has also 10 indicators, and you can see the indicators are in the bottom side. You can see that oral communications, verbal language, oral communication, body language, oral communication, correct use of support elements. So these are the things that in the final milestone it been observed by the supervisor and the external examiners in a public presentation. Now, Farmin is showing that the students, he has developed a student's guide criteria, like in problem formulation. These are the indicators, as we said earlier. And this problem formulation, what is the expectation from the students at the initial milestone when the PM teacher is there? So in the case of problem formulation, the expectation from student is, what problem does the project address? Has the problem already been solved? If so, can an existing solution be used or adapted? Or does a new solution need to be designed? What are the aims of the bachelor's thesis? Are they clearly and comprehensively specified? Is the scope of the project delimited? Who is the product intended for? Who will use the solution? Who will benefit from the results? Is the project complex enough to be considered a bachelor's thesis? Is there sufficient justification for it to be carried out by a technical engineer? So this is the initial milestone rubric. And this in a problem formulation does not have any rubric for follow-up milestone, but it has a rubric in the final milestone. To what extent does the project solve the initial problem? Okay. Like then the another indicator is contextualization of the project, and follow-up milestone rubric is, does the student give an adequate definition of the framework in which the bachelor's thesis is carried out? Does the student describe how the problem in question is currently managed? Does the student consider the availability of similar or related products? Does the student justify his or her choice of technologies? So you can see that there is a student's guide criteria, and when students are producing a report, they can see these guide criteria, and they do well know and understand that what is the expected outcomes from them. So this is the student guide proposed by Farmin, and these indicators, this is just a distribution of milestone indicator. You can see in the row, the indicators are mentioned and in which milestone this has been observed, given. The details you'll find into his literature, his publication. And here you can see that distribution of indicators according to professional skills. Here the professional skills have been covered only. Professional skills mean like these are considered as soft skills as well. So you can see that these are the indicators like and say problem statements. So this indicator or skills have been given to reasoning this level. So these are the different levels like in uh, entrepreneurship and innovation, sustainability and social, oral and written communication. So these are the indicators level, and so these indicators are to be attained at this level, or this is the professional skills and the indicators mentioned in this tabular form. And the final grade calculation is coming from technical skills 60% and professional skills 40%. So these are the professional skills. So they are saying that say if someone asks like what grade would you give to an excellent project with a horrible report and bad oral presentation, using the proposed weight distribution, that project should receive a grade of 6 because they have got a very good technical skill, but they are very poor in professional skill. So in the professional skill side, out of 10, they'll get a 0, and here they will get 6 out of 10. So they are getting receiving a grade of 10. So if it is still good in technical skills, due to poor professional skills, they will get a 0. So these are some of the contexts I have gone through, and I wanted to share with all of you that what are the different types of approaches being followed at the different schools and different programs around the world. And also in Bangladesh, we are also trying to follow some approaches, and the different universities are still struggling to define their own approaches, but everyone is trying to adopt a good one. So in our university, at United International University, in our computer science and engineering department, we call it FYDP, finally a design project, and we have divided it into 2 semesters as FYDP1 and FYDP2. So a mentor or supervisor is assigned to a team of 3 or 4 students at the start of the first semester. And in the first semester, groups are aggregated together to a reasonable size classes and continue regular classes, almost 2.5 hours with a dedicated class teacher. So there is a class teacher in the first semester for maybe a number of groups, basically a class size of 20 or to 30 students together. And in the first semester, students usually do the followings like selection and confirmation of the problem with the help of class teacher and the mentor. Then why are saying that confirmation of the problem? Because at initially we can see that students are coming up with project ideas like development of a library management system or development of a ticket management system, which are very simple and very like what is a very rudimentary type of things. Now, it is the responsibility of the class teacher or the mainly the class teacher to challenge the team that how they demonstrate that their problem is complex engineering problem. So we follow certain processes to push the students to go in-depth analysis of the problem, and so that they can find out that the solution is a unique one. And if they fail, then they have to revise the definition of their problem, the scope of the problem, or even sometimes they wanted to change their problem and take another new problem. So this is very important, like the confirmation of the problem. And then when the problem is confirmed, then we go for the requirement analysis and literature review. Sometimes to find out that whether there is any of this solution or not, the requirement analysis and literature review goes in parallel. And through gap analysis, they find out if there are some gap is existing in that particular problem domain. Then the student is also taught about the project management, like how to create the work breakdown structure and what are the things they want to complete in the first semester and then in every week, and what are the things they want to complete in the second semester and in every week, and the design of the solution as well. They do it in the first semester, and for this they do their perform the weekly meetings. They submit journal report or team report. Basically, I used to exercise on the pre-class and post-class report. I tell my students to do a meeting before the class and to do another meeting after the class. They are also allowed to do it online. And the in the pre-class meeting is like uh, all their achievements they have done in the past week. They write it in that class, and in the post-class meeting, the students actually uh, uh, identifies what needs to be done in the next week based on the discussion in the class. So there are two meetings before class and after the class is mandatory, and each group is submitting a report at every week regarding the pre-class and post-class meeting. And finally, an assessment through presentation is taken at the end of the first semester in the presence of course teacher and the supervisor. Here is the mark that is being given at the end of the first semester. It is a mentor gives 35% marks, and class teacher gives 65% marks. And you can see that these are the breakup of the marks. Like T means teacher, M means mentor. So teacher is giving the journal marks 20 out of 100, and requirements and analysis 10, and complexities and 10, and communication 15, and teamwork is 15, 10, and the mentor is giving marks on problem definition, literature review and gap analysis, and the communication is 15. So these are the marks given to the mentors and the teachers means course teachers or the class teachers. So and in the second semester, students usually start developing the project and work only with the supervisor. Here, there is really role of the class teacher. Actually, there is no role of class teacher in the second semester. Supervisor supervises the all the development works, and finally an assessment through presentation is taken at the end of the second semester. And but here also during the final assessment, the post teacher stays there as an external, and the supervisor is always there. The students submit a final report, and also they give a presentation. So and here also the mark is given in this way, like there are some marks given by the mentors. You can see it is written down here, and some marks are given by the teachers. So teachers mean that the class teacher in the final first semester who was actually involved in the first semester, but he in this second semester, this class teacher is working as an external. So the marks are given on a continuous assessment and requirements and standards maintained, and the design part, and the environmental impact, societal impact, ethical impact, validation, the lifelong learning, and also on the presentation, both mentor and teacher are giving some marks on presentation, and mentor is also giving some mark on teamwork. So this is how the marks are distributed. So as I said that there are many challenges, but first and the most important challenge is to find out a problem which is complex engineering problem. We satisfied the criteria of a complex engineering problem. And this is this challenge, to meet up this challenge, it is important for the faculty members to also understand how do we define a complex engineering problem. So here we come almost to the conclusion. And so some final words, like there are many deciding factors to make the outcome of a final year project or final year design project or capstone project. The aim of this project should target the student outcomes according to the accreditation agency and aligned with the vision and mission of the organization and the department. Innovation in managing final year project is a common scenario, and with the faster change of the technical domain of business, adaptation to modern technology and practices for the faculty members is essential to reduce the gap of mindset of the faculty members who never have got exposed to industrial practices. Similarly, industry involvement in the project should be explored for at least some of the projects. So, as I said, that this is a big challenge for the faculty members, where you know that faculty members are not always exposed to industry. Not all faculty members are exposed to the industry, especially some of the senior faculty members in most of the cases. And due to the lack of understanding of the happenings going around in the industry, it becomes sometimes difficult for the teacher to guide the students in a right direction, that to fill the gap between the academy and the industry sector. So, however, these are all the challenges. So we have to overcome these challenges, and with this, I would like to conclude my talk, and thank you all for being here in this session. Now, next to Professor Altaf. Professor Altaf, I'm done here.